How long does it take to prepare a business to be listed for sale?
That's like how much money you want, Greg. Are you looking at just selling the yellow iron out of the back lot, or you want to make some money on this? The reality is to do a quick and dirty 6 months, I would say. And when I say quick and dirty, you can get some SOPs in place. You're probably going to get a little bit more than just the value of your assets. But if you really want to sit down and look at it and you want to build it, I like to say 3 years, because I know that the buyer is going to look at 3 years predictable profit. And it's not because it takes 3 years to get profitable. You just have to show predictability for 3 years.
I'm Greg Forzani with Forzani Business Education, and this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast, where we provide insights for more profit and less stress in your business now with the purpose of turning it into a valuable asset. Okay, welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm Greg Forzani, and I got a really cool guest today. It's Ron Farrell from Grounded Growth Coaching, and Ron is one of our licensed coaches, meaning he's licensed our Forzani Business Education curriculum to use with his clients. But more importantly, Ron's got a wealth of experience and some really cool insights. And I think we'll have some great conversations around literally actually probably one of my favorite subjects, which is business acquisitions. So whether you want to sell or buy a business, and Ron, I'll ask you this in a sec, but I'm a huge believer in, if you're going to own a business, it's about what asset are you building. Like at the end of the day, it's great to own a business and love what you do. It's great to help people. It's great to solve a purpose. It's great to build a team. All that stuff's awesome. But honestly, if you're not building something of value, then what are we doing, right?
I agree. It's kind of like buying a job if you're not doing
right.
something you can sell. And often you end up getting paid too little for the job that you just bought for yourself.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny you just said that. One of my favorite, I don't know if you do this, but one of my favorite ways to help a business owner understand what you just said is to kind of say to them, hey, do a quick role play with me. And I say, so I got this job available and it pays, I make a number up like $100,000 a year, and it's with this company, and pretend you really I say to the business owner, you really want the job, you want to work there. And they're like, great. So we do an interview, we do a hiring process. I'm like, I want you to work for me. You're like, I want to work there. I'm like, great. Job pays $100,000 a year. I'd like you to prepay me $300,000 for the job. And then I'll pay you $100,000 a year. And whenever you quit, you quit. And whenever I terminate you, but you don't get the $300,000 back. You pay $300,000 for the right to have the job, right? Wow. And you just see their face go, like, I think I misunderstood what you just said. And then you say to them, well, switch the name to a business. And like in many cases, that's what business owners are doing, right? It's crazy. It's nuts. Okay. So lots to talk about. And I know you got some great experience and a wealth of knowledge in this category. So it'll be a really great conversation. But starting with I wrote down a couple of questions, but like if someone has a business and they're thinking about selling it, or maybe their objective is to sell it, like, I don't know, share your thoughts on, well, first of all, should the objective be, if someone owns a business or starts a business, should the objective be to, I know it sounds like a stupid question, but to build it into something valuable?
I can't imagine not doing that, because that's what I've always looked at business for. But at the same point, I've talked to so many people that they're talking about business as in working for themselves.
Right.
You're your own boss. But what happens when you stop working? And they're not thinking about selling it. They're not thinking about whether they've got an asset at the end of the day. They're just going to close the doors and walk away. You see this a lot in trades particularly, but also a lot of service things. An accountant is a good example. If you don't build a firm around you, if you're just a one-person accountant, at the end of the day, you're walking away and you hope that you've saved enough to retire.
And then they get into the old, well, I'll just sell a book of business, right? I'll refer my clients and someone will give me some kind of commission, but then the clients may not stay. And then it's just a totally different. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. You're so correct in what you just said about people thinking like, oh, I want to be my own boss. Like what you just said is spot on. It really, I don't know if it makes you feel the same way, but it's like the old saying about the metal glove down the chalkboard sound, like that sound that drives people nuts, right? That sound when people say, I do it because I want to work for myself and whatever, and they don't think about the asset or it makes me crazy. In their best interest, it makes me crazy because they're missing the point of like owning a business. is more stressful than having a job. It is. So it's what you sign up for. And if you're going to do it, which is great because not everybody can, then you should get paid for that at some point, right? Like that's.
And well, I mean, you talk throughout your program about 3 ways you get paid, not just for the work you do, but take a profit every year and then have something to sell at the end of your career.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say most people, probably their house is their biggest asset. But if you're a business owner, your business should actually be your biggest asset. The house should be number 2, in theory, right? Depends what you own, whatever. Or you made really good money in your business and you bought some massive house, then it might be worth more than the business. But in theory, it should be your most valuable asset. And it's really painful to listen to when people don't see it that way or don't believe they can achieve that.
I know. And particularly when you've got a few partners working together and they've got nothing to walk away from at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. It's a good point. So if you have partners and there's very little, then with partners, you get half of very little, which is
exactly.
even less. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I always think 2 reasons people want to buy a business, right? So let's just like, I know we're going to get in a few minutes, we'll get into like selling a business, but like, why would people want to buy a business? And I always look at it, I don't know if you agree with this or you see something else, but I think there's sort of 2 things, right? Someone either wants something safe and predictable that works and is proven and they can improve upon it, I guess. So start with something predictable and valuable that works. Or someone may feel like they want to go tackle a tiger and buy something that's a turnaround, right? Like something that's not working well, and then they want to turn it around and make it better and make money. And it's higher risk. You get a better deal on it. It's like a fixer-upper, right?
I think that both of those, the ultimate goal is the same. That's safe and predictable. Yeah. But if you can get it at a discount and buy that fixer-upper, it's sometimes worthwhile if you've got the understanding of how to make that happen.
Exactly. That's well, like, as you know, we work really hard on trying to lay out a curriculum that we can work business owners through to be able to do that, right? That is the objective. And I always think of like buying a struggling or failing business as a turnaround. I actually think that's the number 1 marketing strategy. I love when people say, oh, there's this marketing strategy out there that's the best thing in the world. And you go, okay, it's great. And it might be proven in places it works. But man, the number 1 marketing strategy is to buy a failing business cheap and turn it around because you're buying all those customers or that goodwill or that. Yeah, I just call it a marketing strategy. I think it's great.
It's a really good idea. If you know, I keep on coming back to the if you know what you're doing, because recognizing, first of all, why they're failing is kind of important. You know, it's one thing if they're just not managing their expenses right. They haven't managed their gross margin right. It's another thing if they're not providing a good service or a good product. In that case, that struggling business is not going to do you any good.
Yeah, especially if it's a bad product or service that can't be fixed. You're dead right. Versus if maybe it's a service like a restaurant or something where the food's shitty, you can fix that with a good chef, right? To your point, like I have the same view you just said, and I'll often refer to it as like if you're selling pink toilet paper and that's all you sell, you're kind of shit out of luck, right? And then I actually couldn't believe this, and I took a picture. I don't know, a number of years ago, I went to Europe, and I was in Paris. And I walked in they call them like a little dépanneur, so a little corner store. And I walk in, there's a wall of pink toilet paper. And I'm like, someone's playing a joke on me. Anyway, but to your point, if the product or service is not fixable, you're right, run away. But if it's fixable, then you got to bring in the experts or whoever's an expert at that product or service and fix it. Absolutely.
The reality is, though, on those fixer-upper businesses, often you get people that were really good at their trade that didn't know how to run a business, in which case the service isn't the problem. The product isn't the problem. It's managing your expenses. It's managing your margins. It's knowing how to market it, what marketing's working and what's not. Just making good financial decisions can make all the difference.
What if someone listening to this says, oh, but Ron, you don't understand, like, in my industry, it's always about like who's the best price wins the deal.
Ron, you don't understand. I hear all the time. I'm different. Yeah, that always is going on. The reality is the business isn't different than the next business. There are certain industry blinders that we've talked about in the past that keep people from thinking outside the box. Okay, Let's talk about this for a second. We are buying a company called Budget Blinds, and a lot of people think budget blinds, cheap blinds, but that's not
Right.
really what it is. Budget
Right.
means there's something for every budget in it.
Right.
And the reality is you've just got to be able to show value. It's not about price, it's about value for money.
Any little tips you'd give to people on that? I mean, without going too deep into it, but what if someone says to you, but I think I already do that? You say to them,
Then think about your positioning in the market. Don't fight on price. If you think that you're providing good value, tell your clients that you're providing good value and that it's worth more than the guys that are the cheapest.
Yeah. I always like to use the example of when a client or business owner is like, well, but I got to be the cheapest, like we're talking about. I always like to kind of flip the story and say, okay, well, like you said, provide value. And they're like, well, I am providing value, or they can't. They're kind of fighting it. I'll say, the city you're living in or the town you're living in, what's like the worst, highest crime, roughest neighborhood?
Yeah.
And they'll pick one. And I know you live in the Calgary area, so if it's in Calgary, they'd say like Forest Lawn, and wherever that is in whatever city somebody lives in. And I'd say, so do you live there? And they're like, well, no, I don't live there. Well, why don't you live there? Well, because there's crime and this and that and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the cheapest. Why wouldn't you live in that neighborhood if it's the cheapest house? You get the most bang for the buck. Like, it's really stupid actually not to buy there. And then you get them to argue it. They argue like, oh, well, again, the crime, my kids, I don't feel safe with them and I have to drive them to school and lots of drugs in the schools and lots of this. And I'm like, well, but again, it's the cheapest. I just don't understand why you're fighting this. You should buy that house in that neighborhood because it's the cheapest. And then you can finally see the light bulb go on where they realize, okay, in many areas in their life, they realize as a customer, it's value, it's price to the value, right? So, but they have a hard time as a business owner getting their own head wrapped around justifying that to their customer, right? And a lot of times, well, you and I will help with that when we work with clients to help them realize where they sit in the market there and how to actually calculate what they need to charge for that product or service so they can make money.
And how to position it so that price doesn't scare a customer away, because the reality is it's not price, it's value.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, so I know you got some experience with this, but because you've successfully sold a business and this is really cool. We'll get into this story, I guess, but you've just recently, you sold one business successfully, which we should talk about first. And then after we talk about that, we'll get into, you've recently, we'll say, tried to buy two different businesses, and one you bought and one you walked away from. But I also want to talk about like the research you did to even find a business you wanted to buy. So let's start with the one you sold. The one you sold and we covered this in the other podcast we did with you, so we don't have to go too deep, but you essentially, I believe you sold the business for like 7.5 times more than you paid for it, something in that range.
Pretty much exactly 7.5 times the acquisition. Exactly. Yes.
And what made the business so valuable for the buyer to look at on a high level? What are some things that, like, when someone's looking for a business, what makes it valuable?
Systems that will work for a new owner. One of the things that I focus on when I'm looking at businesses to buy and when I'm helping businesses get ready to sell is owner independence. If you've got systems set up so that you can walk away and the business still runs, it is more attractive to somebody else that's coming in to buy that won't maybe be tied to that desk 40 hours a week.
Because I think I agree with you. I think if you were truly to ask someone buying a business, what's your number one fear or priority, I should say, a better word, would be the fear of losing their investment. I think that's always a buyer's number one. Like, this is great. I love the opportunity. It's going to be really cool. But first, what's the likelihood I'm going to lose my investments? And if they're buying something successful, that investment's higher. So then, like you just said, you got to have all those things in place so that the predictability is there and the buyer knows that when, if it's Ron selling his business, when Ron leaves, I'm going to succeed. Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
Too many people out there are just buying a client list. And the reality is that client list is only as good as the service that you continue to provide after the close of the sale. And that comes down to how well it's run, what you've got in place for a team, and yes, profitability, making sure that business can pay for itself.
Okay, so we say all this because every business owner should want to get their business to the point of the ones you were looking for to find. So just of all the stuff you're looking for, like, what percentage was healthy, predictable, profitable, whatever word you want to use? Like,
so, and I want to refer back to what we talked about in our last podcast a little bit. I had told you that I'd looked at hundreds of teasers, and of those hundreds of teasers, I only chose dozens to look further into. And it's not because all of them were not worth more than their assets. These ones were being marketed by business brokers, so there was a higher percentage of those that were worth more than their assets than just total businesses overall. There's a whole lot of reasons that I'd not want to look further into it. Don't want to do retail, don't want to do food service, things like that.
Right.
And sometimes just maybe that was too large for the investment that I was looking to make. Ultimately, these are the ones that were vetted by business brokers to be worth more than just their assets, hopefully.
so sorry, the dozen or so that you looked at were vetted by brokers, or the hundreds you looked at
The
were vetted by
hundreds were.
brokers?
The hundreds were.
So
Now-
actually, so let me say this back to you. You looked at like a dozen or two of hundreds,
Yes.
which is not a big number. Like that's a low ratio or low percentage. But you're actually saying the hundreds you looked at were already vetted by brokers, which actually means that dozens to the hundreds, like it's actually dozens to thousands.
Thousands.
Wow.
It really is, because there's so many that wouldn't even get that far, that a broker's not even going to look at.
That's wild. Okay, so you looked at dozens because of whatever varying reasons.
Yeah, probably about 25 different sims that I've looked at.
And as a buyer, so again, a business owner listening to this is thinking, okay, one day I want to sell. What do I got to be? I got to prepare my business so it's attractive. So as a buyer who's an astute buyer, what were some things you were looking for?
I'm looking for, particularly if the tenure was relatively long. There was one that I was looking at that was in play. I'm pretty sure it was second or third generation, 56 years in business. And they were paying themselves less than $100,000 a year with $30,000 profit after 56 years in business. How? And that one I actually looked at as being a good potential turnaround.
Yeah, for sure. Because they got the brand equity.
Exactly. The problem with that is they didn't have the cash flow to fund the loan.
Okay, so that's important. So tenure, I get it, because that's the brand and I guess the equity in the brand, the likelihood you'll be able to do something with it. But cash flow of the business, expand on that. What do you mean? Or cash flow of the loan, sorry.
Cash flow of the loan. You and I know that I could potentially buy some of these businesses straight up cash.
Yep.
But I don't want to, because if I use somebody else's money, I get a better return on my investment.
Yep.
So I want to put in 35% of that business's value and have 65 to 70% financed through a lender. But the business then has to both be able to provide me a fair market value for what I'm doing, finance the loan before taxes, and hopefully have some profit left, even in that 5 to 7 years that it's going to take me to pay it off, not just after I pay the loan off.
Right. And from a lender's perspective, is there certain numbers they're looking for? Is a lender looking for like 30, 35% down is a sweet spot, or are they looking for put enough down that the profit will cash flow the payment, or they don't care because they just want security? Or what's been your experience with that?
Well, the experience that I've got is for two numbers particularly. They're looking at funding up to 70% maximum. So that means 30% or more as an investment by the buyer. They're valuing the business, the whole business, not just the goodwill, but the whole business at a maximum of 2.5 times EBITDA. So even if there's assets in place, and this is something that we didn't talk about previously, if we've determined that the EBITDA is worth 3.5 times and there's another $500,000 in assets, we would add that to the EBITDA. The bank will not. The bank is just going to look at the 2.5 times the EBITDA, and that's it.
This
and
is
when it comes to
crazy.
I know. But then when it comes to actual cash flowing it, they need a 1.25 times your cash flow in order to cover the loan. So you've got to be bringing in, after all of your expenses, 125% of the loan payment.
So just to be clear, they want, let's call it SDEs, seller discretionary earning. I'm assuming you mean to be 1.25 times the loan payment. Is that so between salary and profit together? Is that where you're?
I mean, if you're not paying yourself a salary, because if you're paying yourself a salary, they're taking that out of there too.
Okay, so then they actually want profit. So in other words, they want the buyer to agree like the profit needs to be 1.25 times the loan payment.
The loan payment, yes.
Okay, interesting. So then for a seller or someone, not even a seller, someone trying to set their business up, the trick is to set it up. I mean, the higher your profit percent, the more your business will qualify for one of those loans.
Without question. Having said that, if you do get your business systemized and you get it worth 3.5 or 4 or 5 times cash flow, then the bank's probably only going to fund half of it because they don't recognize the higher profile.
And it's interesting because the research I've done says roughly 95% of businesses fail. They go bankrupt or close. And only like 2.5% of businesses sell for more than just the asset value, which reflects the research you've done on what you found in the ratio. So then that kind of says of the businesses that make money, like most are making less than 10% bottom line after paying that fair market wage. So if a business owner can get their business where it's making 15-20%, which is generally speaking is kind of unheard of, but we are seeing with our curriculum that like over half the clients are making over 15% profit, which is just nuts. But if they can do that, then the likelihood of a buyer getting the bank to work with them increases probably exponentially because they got such a high profit percentage, such a high cash there.
Don't disagree at all. The bank is going to look at something that is cash flowing well. It's got good percentages. They're always asking for 2 years projections going forward as well. So when you look at those projections, yes, you've got to base it a little bit on historical. But if you can also convince the bank that you can do better because you've got particular systems, and I'm talking about credibly better, not just pie in the sky stuff.
Right.
That I am going to take these particular steps to improve the performance, and this is why we know that this works. That is even going to present you in a better light to the lender.
So you found that. So they want the 2 years history, and that's waiting on their decision.
No, they want 5 years history.
They want 5 years history. So that's waiting on their position. And you're saying a percentage of that waiting is based on your 2-year projection and the meat behind that, like the actual tangible, do this and do this and do this. And here's the logic behind it to fix this number, and this number. Interesting. So just out of curiosity, and I know they probably don't tell you this, but if you were to best guess, of 100% of their decision, what is 80% of it due to history and 20% due to that 2-year plan or 50-50? Or what do you think that, and again, I know you're guessing because the bank's not going to tell you, but.
I feel like the historical weighting is a higher value to the bank. The projections matter when there's not as much history in place.
Right.
But again, I mean, the banks are like, yeah, everybody says they're going to do better. How are you at insurance?
Exactly.
They're
like, I've heard this story before, and 95% of the people we lend to go bankrupt anyway. So
yeah.
What makes your story any better? What would you say to a business owner who either believes this himself or got advice from somebody that's like, well, in your industry or type of business, like you're just going to run it. And when you're done, you're going to shut the doors, you're going to sell off your equipment or whatever you have. And that's kind of it. What would you say to people that are getting that advice and believe that?
As long as you're going to stay a one-man operation, that advice is actually probably pretty accurate. The reality is you've got to want to build something more. We talked about your landscaping company and how he's built a team. He's built a system. It's not just relying on the owner any longer to bring in the clients, to get the work done, to do all the scheduling. You've got to be able to build that team around you. You've got to build the systems. I've got a gentleman that's done some work for us, and in his industry as a sole proprietorship, or he's not going to be able to sell. Having said that, listen to ads on the radio for people in the same industry, and they're running multi-location corporation that could sell for a massive amount. So it's a matter of taking what you've got and systemizing it, teaching other people, replacing yourself.
Yeah. Like you said about the landscaping client, his accountant told him, oh, no, like when it's all done, you're going to sell off your equipment. Like he's got, big trucks and dump trucks and skidsters and all that stuff. He's like, the accountant's like, oh, yeah, just sell that stuff off and close the doors. And he believed that for many years. And he's essentially listing his business for sale as we speak, literally as we speak. And he's going to get, like, the goodwill on the business is about 3.5 times or 4 times more than the equipment value. So like he'll get the equipment value, and then the goodwill portion is 3.5, 4 times the amount of that. It's awesome. And he's going to sell it for enough he can retire and never has to work a day in his life. And he's got lots of plans to go play. He's going to have the money to do it. So he's going to go play, and he's young enough to do it, which is pretty cool.
Well, you know what's going to happen. He's going to sell, play for a bit, and get bored and get back in and do it all over again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, true enough. It's pretty cool though. Like it's, and I don't know, as I hear this, as I'm sort of listening to the two of us talk, I'm thinking like that opportunity is not for everybody. Let me rephrase. That opportunity is available to everybody, but not everybody is wired to want to go after that and take advantage of it, right? But the reality is, well, question for you. So just from what you see out there, like if, maybe somebody's listening to this thinking, wow, that's, my dad told me that owning a business is too much work. And my friends told me, I have friends that are business owners and they said, like, don't bother, like just stay solopreneur, be your own boss, take Mondays off when you want to take Mondays off. Like, don't do it. I tried it, and you got to deal with customers, and you got to deal with staff, and you got to deal with, like, it's not worth it, and you don't make any money. So don't try it. Just have your own truck, be your own plumber with truck business, and it's not worth it. Like, what would you say to somebody that's getting that advice, but maybe doesn't know for themselves that that's the right advice?
Well, the one thing I would say for sure is don't believe them when they say there's no money in it, because you can make sure that there's money in it. Whether you want to take on the responsibilities of a team or staff, that you have to decide for yourself. But
Right.
You can absolutely make money, and you can build something in pretty much every industry that I've looked at. I can't think of one where you can't build a saleable asset.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I grew up in a family that played a lot of sports and was competitive that way. And it was just kind of like, it's merit based, right? You want to, whatever you want to achieve in life. And they played sports and they got into business, and whatever you want to achieve, you go get. It's up to you. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big believer in, like, I think, I guess I'm trying to say is this: if 90 to 95% of businesses are failing, the opportunity is actually really easy to become one of the like 5% to make it. It's right there, because not everybody is prepared to do the work, and not everybody's prepared to find the help to figure out how to succeed. Like, because business owners, right? Big egos. Like, I'm a great plumber, therefore I'm a great business owner too. Sure. Right?
Yes, sir. You're just trying to add another expense line to my P&L statement or something like that. It's tough, because education is like counseling. People are afraid to admit that they have to get help.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to say it. You just nailed it. From what I've seen, I don't know. I think a lot of business owners could relate to this probably, which is they're really good at their product or service. Their friends or customers or family or somebody say, you should go start your own business because you're so good at that product or service you provide. You're a chef or you're a plumber or whatever it happens to be. You know how to pick nice clothes or whatever it is. And so they go start their own business. And all of a sudden, like you just said, human ego kicks in, and they're like, well, now I'm a great business owner too. When it's a completely different skill set. Like it's a completely different skill set. And then the ego kicks in. They don't want to, like you just said, go get that help, right? When it drives me crazy is if they go get the help, and I'm just going to say it, with the success rate of our curriculum, if they go get the help, they could build an asset that they could sell one day for a lot of money. Like, why not even just try that? Like, if you're not succeeding, Test it.
So interestingly, you're talking about people that are really good at what they do and going from there. What a lot of people think is I'm getting paid $50 an hour to work for XYZ company. If I go on my own, contractor rates are $125. I'm gonna make
Right.
I'm gonna make it 150% more.
Right.
Without considering the fact that they've got to cover all their own expenses and all the rest of this. They
And
just
they got to pay the other guy $50 to do the work.
see in their head, I'm making 150% more. No, you're not. No, you're not.
No.
But let's look at this and let's figure out how we can build it.
Yeah, it's so true. 100% true. Okay, so I had a question written down I want to circle back to. So someone does the work, builds their business, systemizes it, fixes the margins, makes it profitable, hires a team that follows that system so it's not so reliant on the owner. Things are going really good. They got this asset or this thing that people would probably want. For what you've seen, because you looked at hundreds of businesses,
Yes.
and been involved in wanting to buy. Ooh, don't let me forget. I do want to talk about you walked away from one deal. So I want to get into that and find out what would make someone want to walk away from a deal. We'll come back to that. But you do all that work, you got this desirable asset. When you go to, so someone that made, right now they're like, I don't know, like, can I make that happen? So let's pretend they do. Then when they go to list it, how fast or slow from what you've seen can that happen? Like, how quickly can you get an interested buyer? How long does it take? Because people probably don't have any idea. They probably think they put it up for sale and it might take 10 years.
One that I looked at, and it's not one that we closed on. I actually did an LOI, and it wasn't because I didn't want to close on it. It's because when I found out about it, they sent me all of the documentation, called me the next day and said, we got 4 offers coming in.
Right.
You better get your offer in now. Otherwise you're not even going to have a seat at the table.
Right.
Okay, wait. I haven't.
You're like, I don't even know the name of the business right now.
24 hours yet. and so, yeah, I turned around and I got an LOI in on that business within another 3 or 4 hours after that. So before they took it to the seller. And yeah, we weren't successful, not because we didn't want to be, but because they had 4 offers.
Right. It's crazy, right? We found that my wife and I sold a store here in Phoenix, and as I recall, I think we listed it on a Saturday. By Monday, we had an interested party. By Wednesday, and we're all excited. And by Wednesday, the interested party put in an LOI, like you just said. And we're like, great. We went through that, hammered out the details, all good. Pretty much gave us super close to asking price. So we're super happy. Get the LOI signed, and the LOI basically says we can talk to other buyers, but we can't accept any offers, and that's fair. So we did that. And literally within a week after that LOI was signed, all of a sudden the other buyers start coming in. We're talking to them. We can't accept any LOIs, but we had 6 other buyers that actually said, we will pay you more than your asking price if you can walk away from that other buyer. And I'm just like, why are you so hell bent on buying this? Why are you willing to pay more? I asked all of them. And they're like, we've been shopping around for businesses and most of them suck. They're not worth anything. There's no predictability. There's no systems. There's no predictable profit. There's none of that. And to something you said earlier, they all noticed that we believe this one will succeed even when you, the current owner, are gone. So that, is huge validation for me that the curriculum we use with clients works. It was also a major, I took on the LOI too quickly. Should have had resistance to say, I'm going to give it 30 days to see what comes in because we could have made more money. I'm like, damn.
Nah, 7 days is all you needed, Greg.
Right. So now, it's like shit. But we were super happy about the whole deal. And the best part was then the buyer did his, and again, I say this because people should learn from this. So the first buyer does his due diligence and comes back and, does the typical, hey, I need a discount here, here, and here, because that's part of the due diligence negotiating process. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, I said, I'm just being honest. It'd be great if you walked away from this deal because we have 6 other buyers that are going to pay more. That'd be awesome. He's like, oh, no, I'll take it. We'll take it at the price I got it at. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had told you that I had put in 4 LOIs. 2 of them I lost, not because I didn't want them, because they were good businesses to buy. And there was
other people. Yeah.
There was
So it
multiple.
happens fast.
Yeah.
Now, what happened on the one you got to the short strokes and then walked away from? And you don't have to give away proprietary details, but because you probably signed like an NDA or whatever, but just maybe share. So a business owner is ready to sell, or even someone looking to buy. It's a bit of education on flags. Like, these are things you better have sorted out, because when you get to the short strokes, the buyer might walk away if you don't have these things sorted out or whatever.
Well, and sometimes it's out of the buyer's or out of the seller's control, and buyers for that matter. This particular one had to do with a franchise agreement, and it was really hard for me to say no, because I was excited about the business. I knew that I could do good things with that, but you've got to pay attention to those red flags. If you see something, in this case, it was within the franchise agreement, and there was a lot of different clauses in there that I didn't love, but I also understand it's a franchise. They're going to have a little bit more oversight than a business that's not franchised. There was 2 items in there that I just couldn't live with, so I had to say no.
And that goes back to, and actually we should talk about this, because you brought up pre-podcast when we were just chatting about one of the things, like if you're looking to buy a business and maybe you're thinking about partnering, and we'll talk about that in a second, but does it make sense to partner, and is it the right partner? But that sort of piggybacks the same concept of, you're looking at a franchise agreement that you're locked into. Like, as long as you own that business, you're locked into that agreement or what it's going to say. So if there's some stuff in there that you're just like deep down in your gut, you're like, that's going to be a problem, then it's probably a good idea to flag that before you dive in the romantic phase where you're like, oh, this is going to be so great, it won't be a problem. But then 5 years later, it turns out to be a problem. So good advice. And so then you brought up about partnership. So what advice do you have for people on looking to start a business or buy a business and partner up? And what are your thoughts around that?
Well, making sure that your partner is, first of all, contributing on the same level as you. And that's not necessarily a dollar for dollar contribution. It might be a contribution in kind. Potentially, you've got a partner that's going to be managing or running the business day to day while you're investing the money. Making sure that you're just not taken advantage of, that they're not looking for you to do the cash input and the work, and they're walking away with the money. So yeah, just really, really get to know your potential partners. It's a really, really big thing. I've seen it in a couple of instances. One small little business I had years and years and years ago that I ended up doing everything. And I mean, it wasn't a real big business. It was more of a lifestyle hobby type thing. But we ended up just closing that down. It never went anywhere because it all fell to me while I was running another business. And then I'm looking at one right now, potential partnership, and I'm feeling like, okay, I'm not sure that it's an equitable contribution here, because it looks like it's my money, my expertise, and potentially even my client list. And I'm like, what are you bringing to the table here?
Some fun and a hug.
Not sure right now, but
yeah, I've always kind of thought of, and it's hard to stick to your rules on it, but I've always kind of thought of, like, when clients ask me about partnerships or whatever, I'm like, there's 2 unique questions you can ask yourself. Will that partner help ensure you get to that destination you want to get to? Like in other words, without that partner, you can't get there. Or will you be able to get to that destination faster instead of a low, slow grind on your own? Will it happen just a lot faster, and therefore it pays off for everybody? And it's hard, right? Because you go into those situations and it's always just seems like a path of least resistance to have a friend to do it with, so to speak, but not necessarily does it always pay off, to your point.
Well, and I'm getting to the point right now when you've got multiple operations that you can't do it all on your own. So having a partner is going to be an important part of the equation.
Yeah.
Just be careful who you partner with.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. So maybe let's talk a little bit more around, so I think one of the businesses you just bought, you were focused on the predictability aspect of it. So maybe just talk a little more about that. Sharing with people, like if I'm buying a predictable business, what were some of the things you were looking at in the due diligence on top of what you've already shared?
Okay. Obviously the financial statements really looked good, and that mattered. But when we got into due diligence, first of all, I'd ask for something and it was in my inbox in the next 24 hours. or
So be
less.
prepared.
He had it. It was at his fingertips. It was there. It was ready. It was because he didn't do it for me. He did it for himself. I just asked for it.
Right. It's funny you say that. Sorry, and I want you to keep sharing other stuff, but you're making me think of some good friends of ours in here in Arizona. We're looking at buying a local business. It was a franchise. And this discussion started has to be 3-4 months ago. And they're asking for super basic stuff. And literally just maybe a week ago, they finally got just financials. It's been 3-4 months, which you can imagine confidence level just goes like this, right? I can't wait to buy a business that's like the wild, wild west and they have no idea what's going on.
Not good.
Which really meant when we got the financials, the business sucked. And I just said, hey, it was a great exercise to go through to learn what not to buy. But to your point, that business didn't have anything ready, which meant they didn't use any of that stuff. They didn't know what was going on, which led to shitty business.
So to build on top of that, now that was the things that I was asking for during due diligence. And it might have been financials. It might have been operational stuff and vehicles, insurance, all the rest of that. But then my partner is actually training in that business as we speak. We haven't taken over, but it comes down to it. And she's like, okay, I get what you're trying to tell me. Is there a place that I can look this up for myself afterwards? And he shows her a database of how-tos, standard operating procedures that boggles her mind. It absolutely boggles her mind. There's so much information here. It's almost too much. But the fact that there is all that information is why it's going to succeed. There's always that thing to refer back.
Exactly. Yeah, I love it. And so in other words, if I were to recap that, you're saying the seller, in their own best interest, if you're a business owner, systemize what needs to be done for the whole team to predictably be successful, whatever that role is, whatever that task is. Because you got to do it for yourself anyway to make yourself successful. Think pro sports, right? Can you imagine I don't know, buying a team in pro sports at any league and having no playbooks, no training, no video play review, no here's how to eat, here's how to work out, none of that. You get killed in pro sports. The teams that have all that stuff will slaughter you. You'll finish last every single season. So create it. You're saying create it for yourself to succeed, but then the added bonus. So A, that'll help you succeed, which B then helps your company be worth more money. But then C, because you made money, your company's worth more. But then C, the buyer has all that confidence you're saying, where it helps increase the multiple even more, because back to that number one question, am I going to lose my investment when I buy this company? So it has so much more, that systemizing has so much more value than people give it credit for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Back to the one that I walked away from. They were doing decent business, but they didn't have those systems in place either. So my offer was literally half the multiple than in the business that I'm proceeding with.
There you go. So there's proof right there, right? There's a astute buyer that's adding value to how systemized, predictable the business is. Yeah. Good advice. It does make a difference. Absolutely. So Ron, good point. So from your experience or knowledge, business owners going along and, sorry, I say this jokingly, decides to sell, but unfortunately, probably 90% of those business owners that decide to sell are deciding to sell for the wrong reasons, right? Bad day, bad month, tired of this, tired of that. That's it, I'm going to sell. Versus playing the game out and selling because they want to retire or move on to the next thing or whatever it happens to be. But knowing that's the case, so probably 90% are selling for the wrong reasons, which means it's impromptu decision or knee-jerk decision. From that moment, how long does it take to, and this is a loaded gun question, because how long does it take to get prepared to sell? But then I guess the answer you're going to say is depends what you prepare. Is it a napkin with a little sticker on it and a number, or is it
that's how much money you want, right?
Right.
Are you looking at just selling the yellow iron out of the back lot, or you want to make some money on this? Right. The reality is to do a quick and dirty 6 months, I would say. And when I say quick and dirty, you can get some SOPs in place. You're probably going to get a little bit more than just the value of your assets. But if you really want to sit down and look at it and you want to build it, I like to say 3 years, because I know that the buyer is going to look at 3 years predictable profit. And it's not because it takes 3 years to get profitable. You just have to show predictability for 3 years.
I think that's huge. That is what you just said is the best answer. It's less about how long does it take me to get a napkin and a pen out and say I'm for sale, because anybody can do that and list tomorrow, but you're not going to get anything. If you want to get some value, what you just said's spot on. It's a different mentality, which is okay. I've had enough. What I'm doing is not working. I got to do something different, and I got to get it so it's predictably profitable, and then have 3 years and even bare minimum 2 years of that predictable profit. So to your point, you're saying it's not make it profitable and then, in 2 years I've made it profitable. It's no, get it profitable, and then you need like 3 years of that profitability.
And how many of those guys that were trying to get out because, things went sideways, spent that 2 to 3 years getting that profitable, no longer want to get out?
Bingo. That actually, that happens a lot with clients. You get when they first start, they're like, okay, why do you want to do this? They're like, I joined to get you to help me to make my business profitable because I want to get out. I'm done. And you're like, okay, sure. So then, like you said, we get it profitable, and then life's pretty good. They're not working 60, 80 hours a week anymore. They're working a normal work schedule. They got people doing stuff, and it's pretty systemized. There's low stress, good money. And they're like, I think I want to keep it now. I like this, which is great, right? They earned it. What's that?
Working 20 hours a week, making, $200,000 or something like that. Like, why would I go anywhere now?
Right. Exactly. But that's pretty cool, right? That's the point about, and it's during that journey that we'll see with clients that they realize they've earned it. And it's not that they weren't working hard before. They were working hard at their service or product, trying to be an expert at that, but they just didn't understand how to become a good business owner, right? And once that clicks and they realize it, then they realize they've earned that. And now, they've earned that situation, which is just awesome. And I kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, but not every business owner is going to be able to get out of their own way with their ego to realize they need help to run the business. And not everybody's prepared to do that little climb, right? Because when you realize you need help, that's one thing, but then you got to make some changes, right? And that comes with some tough decisions sometimes, and not everybody's prepared to do that. But those who are get into a situation that's fantastic, and they've earned it. And they're one of less than 5% of business owners that can reap those benefits, which is awesome, by the way, because it's the whole supply and demand thing, right? If we kind of look at this whole conversation on one umbrella, what you're saying, and my research has backed it, is there's very little supply of predictably profitable businesses. Very little supply.
Huge demand for it.
Huge demand. Exactly. So it's a really cool opportunity for people to earn the right to get into that situation. And then the world's your oyster. You can make, we're seeing clients that go from not making barely any money, whether they're losing money or paying themselves 50, 60 grand a year and really struggling. And then they go to give or take 250 a year. And now life's pretty good. They can put 250 a year in their pocket. It's a good living. They can provide, they can get the house they want. It's all good, but it's systemized. It's pretty calm. And they're like, and then they just, we figure out some more stuff to do. And then they get to 500 and it's like, okay, now life's really good. Because at 500, you can really do what you want to do in life, and you can prepare for retirement. There's a lot there. And that's not what we're seeing is it's not a hard number to get to. It's not.
But I'll tell you something, Greg, the numbers that you're talking about right now, for you and me, it feels right. For a lot of people, that's pie in the sky. They're like, you got to be kidding me. You don't really think I'm going to make that kind of money, do you? But you can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's a good question, I guess. So we actually help pretty much any business owner accomplish that. They can truly hit that 250 in their pocket. So between wage and profit. And then if they can hit the 250, we can get to 500. If we can get to 250, it's a no-brainer to get to 500. It just comes with more decisions and work and hiring people and whatever it is, right? It's absolutely, and I think you said earlier, I haven't seen an industry yet where we can't achieve that. It's obtainable. But I guess a question for both of us is, how do you get someone who says what you just said, which is that's pie in the sky. I'm not worthy. I can never do that. They've never, in their environment, it's just never been believable they can hit that number. Like, how do you help them realize like they can? It's so much more achievable than they think.
Well, the thing is it's easy. It's easy if you know what you're doing. And unfortunately, people think that you've got to work twice as hard to make twice as much money, but you don't.
Right.
You really don't. You make a little tweak on your gross margin over here, and you make a little tweak on your cost of acquisition over there, and you maybe bring your profit up just a hair over here, and all of a sudden your profit is doubled
on the revenue you're doing
on the same revenue without doubling the clients that you're bringing in.
And then probably I'd say from there, then stress comes down, confidence goes up, and then all of a sudden you start being more open-minded and seeing the opportunities to then grow the revenue. Because I think a lot of people probably struggle growing their revenue because they're struggling so bad paying bills that it's written all over their face, and they become really desperate, and it's really hard to market and sell when you're desperate because the target market can feel it, right? And then it becomes my confidence in you is no good because you seem really desperate. So yeah, I agree. I think that
it's just tiny little changes here and there that can make a massive difference.
Yeah. So I'm asking a question we've maybe probably already talked about, but if we were to put an umbrella over this whole thing, what's a few comments or statements you would say to a business owner that may be struggling day to day with the bills, can't pay them? And like here we are talking about selling a business for maybe millions. And they're like, you guys don't understand. Like my situation's different. This is going on. They just don't believe it. So what's some things you would say that maybe we haven't already said to just help open their mind up or their, the opportunity to try it, go for it?
That's a tough question to answer.
Right.
Just because, without sitting down and looking at things, you can't find those easy, quick wins. But they've got to just open themselves up to listening. Let us look because we'll likely be able to find something in the first 60 or 90 days that can turn things around so drastically for them. It's going to blow their mind.
I agree. And especially like if that company's doing $1 million or more in revenue, like it's super easy, usually. I mean, not in this conversation, we're not guaranteeing it, but it's usually extremely likely, very quickly, we can find 2-3 things they can do that in less than 6 months can turn that business around. If they're doing under $1 million, still very likely, but will become then more dependent on what's going on. Like if a company's doing $750,000 and has very little overhead, then those decisions can be made quick and found quick, and that thing can be turned around. But if they're doing $130,000 in revenue, we'll find some things to turn around quick, but then you got a revenue story coming after that. We've got to grow the revenue. But I think, you're right. If they're doing any kind of reasonable revenue, it can be a super fast, quick turnaround. And it doesn't cost them anything to even just come have a meeting and find out. Just find out. Invest 90 minutes of your life and come find out. We do a free strategy call.
Exactly.
And you can achieve, and I'm not saying this because, this is a big sales pitch. I'm saying this because, and I know you're equally as passionate about this as I am, but damn it, man, if you're going to own a business, you have an opportunity to achieve that exit plan. The hardest part's behind you. You own the business. That's the hardest part, right? There's a whole bunch of people there that don't own a business that are like, oh my gosh, to start a business, where do I even begin? So you've done the hardest part. It's right there. And we're passionate about trying to help people get there, and it's absolutely achievable.
People think nothing about spending tens of thousands of dollars to get a journeyman ticket. Right. But they won't learn the business. Invest a little bit to learn how to run a business.
So I hope my laughing isn't sounding disrespectful to anybody, but it's making me realize this is going to sound crazy, but it's almost better. Don't spend the $10,000 or whatever on the journeyman ticket. Hire somebody that's already got it. Spend the $10,000 on how to make a successful business. Yeah. And right? I mean, crazy idea, but you could almost say that.
Yeah. Or do both. If you want to be that journeyman,
or do both.
Sure.
Yeah.
But journeyman doesn't teach you how to balance a statement.
Yeah. Yeah.
How to make decisions based on your P&L.
Exactly. Awesome, my man. Thank you. If people are interested in finding you, How do they find Grounded Growth Coaching?
Groundedgrowthcoaching.com is our website. It's currently undergoing a little bit of a revamp, so you're going to see some new information there soon. And
you get the big coming soon sticker. Under construction, there's a guy with a shovel going under construction.
oh my God, I hate those signs. No. So yeah, come to our website. My phone number's there. Email, obviously, ron@ggcoaching.ca. And love to have a conversation.
And if someone's interested, so let's say someone's heard this, they're interested, they want to hear how you might be able to help them achieve what you've been able to do. Do you do like some kind of strategy call, or what does that look like?
Absolutely, 100%. We do a 90-minute strategy call, and based on that, we figure out what's going to work for you and where we can help.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so our producer likes to shoot us a couple of questions that we aren't prepared for, that are just get to know you questions, and we'll take turns answering them. So first one, I'll get you to answer first. You have a time machine. Do you go to the past or the future, and where exactly? Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah. There's a whole lot of different ways to answer that.
Well, from a business perspective, I'm going to the past, but I want to go to the past with some of the knowledge I have today and start over. That'd be great. Yeah.
So
from a personal perspective, we'd still go to the past, back when ethics mattered, when people were, would talk on the street. We weren't glued to our phones.
Wow. I would almost steal both those answers. Maybe I'll say ditto with specifics. I don't know. Yeah, if it's business, I agree. If I could go back in time with the knowledge I have now and do a couple of things differently.
Yeah.
Imagine. Or crazy. And on a personal note, yeah, it's a good answer, actually. If I could go back in time where I agree with you, things were just a little more ethical, a little more personable. Yeah, amazing. I might, on a side note, if I can go back in time, I was there when the Blue Jays won the World Series, when Carter hit that home run. I actually had a seat in left field. Like the ball went right by us. 92 or 3. Yeah. Because they went back to back. It was the one where Carter hit the home run. Right. It'd be fun to go back and relive that again. And it only sparks that because they were just in the World Series this last year, and it's pretty exciting to watch. Or if I could go back in time, I'd go back to the recent World Series, and, there's about 15 different things that happened in that last game that if they would have just gone the other way, if I could somehow just nudge something some way, they would have won. Yeah. Something like that, maybe. There's a bunch of other stuff I'd like to say, but it's probably not made for podcast material that I should say for going in the past and changing things. Right. So I won't. Okay. So question number 2, how do you define enough in life? Money, success, relationships, etc. Good question.
How do I define enough? For a lot of reasons, there's always, I'm not one to stop. I'm not one to say, okay, we've built enough. We don't need to build anything more. But as long as you've got the proper balance in place, you've got the relationships in place, you've got time to enjoy your life. I've been asked a few times lately what I like to do for myself. Like, I don't know. I have never not had to do for somebody else. There's always been a responsibility there. So having enough time to do for myself is going to be something that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
And that's building a predictable business that doesn't require me to be in there 60 or 80 hours a week.
Right. It's exhilarating for you.
Yeah.
Gives you purpose. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I would say, like, I've always been the kind of person that's about constant improvement. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're playing sports or relationships or business, whatever it is, constant improvement. It's just how I'm wired. If I had to cut that wire, I think I would lose my sense of purpose, and then, life would start to kind of decline for me. So I have to always be looking for constant improvement in whatever it is I'm doing, which could be, I don't know, who knows, someday retirement sets or semi-retirement sets itself. Then it's like, is it a hobby? Is it golf, or that freaking insurmountable crazy sport of surfing? Trying to figure that one out. Because, man, it's hard. But yeah, something like that, right? Because I have seen people I've known in my life that achieved a ton and cold turkey retire, and you just kind of see them sort of become a shell of themselves, right? And wither away. And you can just see they lost their purpose. Yeah, I think to me that's the biggest thing. So no matter what it is, just constant improvement and trying to be the best I can be at that thing, even if it's retirement or semi-retirement, whatever it happens to be. So I think some people would hear that answer and say, oh, anyway, I'm just going to be transparent on this comment because we have a cabin in Oregon and my wife and I went and did a presentation to the chamber. And I got into the conversation we were talking about today, but in 10 minutes, like exit plan your business for the exit, our tool that says you can build it for 10 years. And really just kind of said to the group, like, they're all business owners. I'm like, you can earn the life you want to live, right? You can go get that. And, there was another coach in the area who attended because they were a chamber member. And he sent me an email after and said, in this area, people prioritize lifestyle before building their business. And then his comment was, when's enough with the money? And I was like, okay, expected to hear that because I'm in Oregon. It's super blue state. And that's your choice. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying run out there and go just make money. Like, it's not about that. It's about everybody gets to choose, but you got to have a sense of purpose and you got to, I think the point is that he didn't understand that. My point was you got to earn, like what we've talked about today, you got to earn that life, or what you said, like you want to be able to run a business and not have it totally be reliant on you. You can kind of do it part-time, right? I know it's not a hobby, but then it feels more like a hobby. It's no different than someone going golfing, right? But for you, that sparks your fuel and your fire and you love it. And that's great. Gives you a sense of purpose, right? You don't have to stress about it. Which, by the way, people can say they golf or they retire and go golf. That's a super hard game to master. Yes. Those people, they're telling me that's not stressful. They're full of that's BS. And I love golf. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to do that in retirement, but you can't tell me that thing you're doing is stress-free because it's stressful golf. So whatever it is, you got to pick your thing. But back to the point about the thing in Oregon, I was just like, my point was everybody can earn the life they want to live. They get to choose. But I know this. I know looking around that room and I see that place where our cabin is, almost all those businesses are struggling, can't pay their bills. Buildings are empty. I talked to a whole bunch of them. They're making barely enough to pay their mortgage. You can't tell me that's life balance. That's absolute crap. That's an excuse. That's an excuse for saying they haven't been able to figure it out. And they're saying I got work-life balance. It ain't work-life balance when you can't pay your mortgage or you're worried about putting food on the table or the price of gas tomorrow, or like, that's not work-life balance. That's not true.
Not at all.
Yeah. It's just a mentality that's a mentality that leads to them not becoming successful, which, by the way, can be their choice. That's okay. I don't judge on that, but no, I am judging on that. If you're going to own a business and live life stressful and not pay your freaking bills, I am judging it. That's not a good choice. Then don't own the business. Go work for somebody. Like, you can't say you're okay with it. Either fix it or go work with somebody.
Yeah. There's a balance between being satisfied with what you have and still having aspirations.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Yeah. I would say, that's actually a really good comment. I would say in my 20s and 30s, I was always like, oh, I want more. Where now I'm like really happy with what I have, super happy with what I have, but still have aspirations, and they change, right? They change from, I want to, like, I used to always want the sports car and this and the that. And now I'm like, I actually just love having a truck. It's great. It's awesome. That's all we have is a truck. It's awesome. So I guess to our point, maybe everybody's different, but I love what you said. People have aspirations. Agree totally. And aspirations will change, right? I think I'll say two things about that. I think, like, when someone's struggling paying their bills, you can't really judge people on what they're doing based on their situation. So if someone's struggling paying their bills, then they have to prioritize working long hours, working hard, making tough decisions, finding the right way. Like, they have to prioritize that because they're trying to pay their bills. So someone can't say to that person, oh, you should just immediately starting tomorrow have a work-life balance, when that person can't pay their bills and you can. That's bad advice. They got to help define work-life balance, which would include they got to be able to pay their bills. So they may have to work longer hours, harder, whatever. But then, as you said, aspirations will change. Like, for me, it's less now about the stuff and it's more about, like, and I know you're on the same page with this, but just seeing small businesses just getting freaking destroyed out there. Like, they're just getting killed. And it's not that they're not good at their product or service. They just need help. understand how to play the game and win. And we have a proven curriculum that helps them do that. So that's the new aspiration, be able to help as many of those as possible and see. That's a pretty good feeling to see people turn their lives around and be able to do that. It's pretty awesome.
Let's make them journeyman business owners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, my man.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review as it helps with the algorithm. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, go make it happen.